The shift had been 13 hours long, 13 hours of beeping machines, the clean, sharp smell of antiseptic, and the hushed, anxious whispers of families in waiting rooms. My feet did not feel like feet anymore. They were just two dull, aching stones at the end of my legs, and my scrubs felt glued to my skin with weariness. All I could think about was my apartment, the creak of the floorboard outside my son's room, and the blessed, uncomplicated silence of 3 in the morning. But I had to walk the 6 blocks to the subway. These 6 blocks cut through one of the most expensive parts of New York City, a place where the buildings scraped the clouds and the air itself felt filtered. Tonight, that air was wrong. It was cold, a bitter chill for October, but the wrongness was not the temperature. It was the quiet. This part of the city was never truly quiet, not even at this hour. There should have been late-night taxis, the distant siren, the hum of life. Instead, there was a heavy, waiting silence. I saw them first, 3 men. They were standing near the corner of a closed jewelry store, its windows dark. They wore expensive dark suits, but they did not belong here. They were not bankers or lawyers working late. These men were too big. Their shoulders strained the fabric, and their posture was all wrong. They were trying to look casual, but they looked like wolves trying to pretend they were sheepdogs. Their eyes kept scanning the street, sharp and nervous. Across the road, by a closed art gallery, 2 more, and a black sedan parked halfway down the block, its engine idling, a soft puff of exhaust in the cold air. A knot tightened in my stomach. This was not my business. I was just a mother, a nurse, trying to get home. I clutched the strap of my bag, the thin canvas digging into my shoulder. I picked up my pace. Just get to the intersection, cross the street, get to the subway entrance, head down. Do not make eye contact. The crosswalk light was a bright red hand. Stop! I waited, shifting my weight. The silence stretched. The air was so still I could hear the click of one of the men's shoes on the pavement as he shifted. My heart was thumping a stupid, loud rhythm against my ribs. Then I heard it. It was not a normal engine. It was a scream, a high-pitched, furious roar that tore the silence apart. It was coming fast. A car, low and black and gleaming like wet stone, shot around the far corner. It was not just speeding, it was attacking the road. It swerved, narrowly missing a row of parked cars, its tires barking in protest. I saw the driver for just a second, a young man, dark hair slicked back, his profile sharp and focused. He looked angry. He looked dangerous. The men in suits moved. It happened so fast. They stepped out from the jewelry store, not running but moving with a frightening, deliberate purpose. One of them raised his arm, and I saw the dull black metal in his hand. It was not a movie. It was real. The crosswalk light changed. The red hand vanished, replaced by the white walking man. My body moved before my brain did. Tiredness, instinct, stupidity. I do not know what it was. I took 1 step off the curb. The black sports car was already there. He must have seen the men. He must have seen the gun. He yanked the wheel hard to the side, swerving away from them, straight toward the intersection, straight toward me. Tires smoked. The smell of burning rubber filled my nose, acrid and hot. The car, this impossible black wedge of metal, slid sideways. It stopped. It stopped not 10 inches from my legs. The engine was not roaring anymore. It was a low, deep, threatening growl. I could feel the vibration of it through the soles of my shoes. I was frozen. I could not breathe. I could not move. I was staring at the driver's side door. My whole world shrunk to this one terrifying, vibrating object. The men in the street had stopped too. Everyone was frozen. The man with the gun had his arm half lowered, his face a mask of confusion. This was not in their plan. I was not in their plan. Then the tinted window lowered. It slid down with a faint electric hum, vanishing into the door. And I saw him. The outline in the car had been a sketch. This was the finished, brutal painting. He was young, maybe 28, 29. His face was beautiful in the way a storm is beautiful. all hard angles and perfect, cruel lines. His skin was olive, his jaw was tight, and a faint shadow of stubble covered his chin. But it was his eyes. His eyes were the blackest I had ever seen. They were empty of fear, empty of surprise. They were filled with a cold, absolute authority. He was not the one in danger. He was the danger. He looked at me. He did not look at the men with guns. He did not look down the street. He looked directly at me. His gaze cut through the layers of my exhaustion, my fear, my identity. I was not Emma Carter, mother, nurse. I was just a thing, an obstacle. He was calculating. He was assessing. His eyes moved from my face, down my cheap scrubs, to my worn-out sneakers, and back up. I knew, in that second, what it meant to be inhuman. This man, Luca Ferrari, though I did not know his name then, was not like other people. He lived in a world I could not even imagine, a world of violence and power, and I had just stupidly stepped right into the middle of it. I should have run. I should have screamed. I should have dropped to the ground. I just stood there, my mouth dry, my hospital bag feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. His lips thinned. He was not grateful I had saved him from a bullet. He was not angry I had blocked his path. He looked inconvenienced, as if I were a slow-moving fly he was deciding whether or not to swat. Time had stopped. The men on the street were still frozen, staring at this bizarre standoff, me, in my pale blue scrubs, and him, in his fortress of black metal. He finally broke the stare. He glanced in his side mirror. He saw the men starting to regroup, their confusion turning back to purpose. He looked back at me. One last, cold assessment. He did not say a word. The engine exploded. It was not a rev. It was a detonation. The sound was so loud it shook my bones. He wrenched the steering wheel. The car shot backward, the tires screaming, turning in an impossibly tight arc. He spun the car a full 180 degrees. For a heartbeat, the car was facing me again, before he slammed it into gear. And then he was gone. He did not speed away. He vanished. A black streak swallowed by the shadows of the skyscrapers, the echo of his engine bouncing off the glass and steel. I was left alone in the street. The silence that rushed back in was worse than the noise. "Get him!" The voice was harsh, gravelly. The men were running, doors slammed. The black sedan roared to life and peeled out, chasing the ghost. I stumbled back, my knees weak. I leaned against the cold metal pole of the traffic light. My heart was a wild bird in my chest, beating so hard it hurt. I was shaking, not from fear, not really, from the exposure. I had just touched a different world, a world of predators. And one of them, the apex, had looked right at me. He knew my face. I did not know his name. I did not know who he was or what he was running from. But as I finally forced my aching feet to move toward the subway, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. My life had just changed. The meeting was over, but it was also just beginning. The subway ride home was a hollow space. I sat on the hard plastic seat, my body rocking with the train. But I was not there. I was still on that dark corner, staring into the blackest eyes I had ever seen. When I finally got to my station, my legs moved mechanically, carrying me up the stairs and into the familiar, gritty air of my own neighborhood. Here, the buildings were brick and fire escapes, not glass and steel. My apartment was on the 4th floor, 4 flights of stairs that I usually counted, but tonight I did not. My hands were steady as I slid the key into the 2 locks. I was a professional at being steady. I had to be. The apartment was silent. The only light was the yellow glow of the streetlight filtering through the blinds. I dropped my bag by the door, the thump loud in the quiet, and kicked off my sneakers. My first stop was always his room. Leo was asleep, tangled in his dinosaur blanket. He was 6 years old, all skinny arms and legs, his dark hair a mess against the pillow. I stood in his doorway, just breathing in the quiet of his room. This was my world. This small, cluttered bedroom, the smell of laundry soap and the faint, sweet scent of my sleeping child. This was the place I fought for. This was the life I had built from scratch, piece by piece, with my own 2 hands. I had come to New York with dreams that seemed foolish now. I had met Leo's father, a man with a charming smile and a suitcase full of empty promises. He was gone before Leo took his first breath, leaving me with nothing but a hospital bill and a new, terrifying purpose. I was a single mother. There was no safety net. There was only me. My life was a constant, grueling calculation. I lived in a part of the city where the sirens were a nightly soundtrack and the rent was always climbing. My paycheck was a lifeline. Not a comfort. I counted dollars, not luxuries. I bought groceries based on sales. I mended Leo's clothes myself, and I took every extra shift I could get. My job was my battleground. I was a nurse at a sprawling city hospital, a place that ran on chaos, caffeine, and the sheer desperate will of its staff. It was a world of pressure. Not the pressure of men with guns, but the pressure of a human life fading under your hands. I saw the absolute worst of this city. The overdoses, the accidents, the forgotten elderly, the children who came in with bruises they could not explain. I worked in the surgical ward, a place of beeping machines and the sharp, sterile smell of recovery and loss. I was good at my job. I could be calm when a patient was crashing. I could be kind when a family was breaking. I could hold the hand of a dying man and not let my own fear show. I was a person who patched things up. I fixed what was broken. As I stood in my tiny kitchen, the linoleum cold under my stockinged feet, I replayed the moment at the intersection, the sound of the engine, the smell of the rubber, and his face. That man, he was the opposite of me. He was not a fixer. He was a breaker. I had seen men like him before, or at least the edges of them. New York is a city of layers, and you cannot live here without knowing, deep down, that there is another city beneath the one you see. It is a city of shadows, of old money and old violence. You see it in the dark sedans that glide through traffic, in the restaurants with private back rooms, in the faces of men in expensive suits who never seem to smile. Vittorio Ferrari, the name was a whisper in some parts of the city, a legend. You did not read about him in the newspapers, not really, but you heard things. You heard about the construction projects that never had permit problems, the shipping unions that never went on strike. You heard about the Ferrari family as if they were royalty, a dark, untouchable dynasty that had its roots buried deep in the concrete. And that man in the car, the youth, the anger, the absolute, terrifying ownership of the street, he had to be one of them. He had to be a part of that, a son, a prince in that dark kingdom, Luca Ferrari. The name just appeared in my head, a guess that felt like a certainty. He was a man who had never worried about an electric bill. He was a man who had never sat in a waiting room, praying. He was a man who lived in a world of power and blood, a world where a nurse on her way home from a 13-hour shift was nothing but an insect on his windshield. I went to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. My reflection in the dark window was just a pale, tired shape. I was Emma Carter. I was 32 years old, and I was a mother, a nurse. I was exhausted. I did not have time for this. I did not have room in my life for this. That world was not my world. But as I finally crawled into my own bed, the sheets felt cold. I stared at the ceiling, at the faint cracks in the plaster. I had seen his face, and he had seen mine. And in a city of 8 million people, that suddenly felt like a dangerous, fragile connection. I had seen something I was not supposed to see. And I had a terrifying feeling that the world of Luca Ferrari, the world of power and shadows, did not tolerate witnesses. 2 weeks. That is how long I lasted in my normal life. For 2 weeks, I scrubbed in, I charted, I took Leo to the park on my day off, and I paid my gas bill. I told myself the man in the black car was an anomaly, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and the city's inherent madness. I forced the memory of his eyes, that cold, black, inhuman stare, out of my head. I had a child to raise. I had a shift starting at 7. I did not have time for dark princes and street corner gunfights. But the city had other plans. It was a Tuesday. It had been raining, a cold, miserable drizzle that made the whole city smell like wet trash. My shift had been brutal. A 4-car pileup on the BQE. We had been short-staffed again. I was running on fumes, my brain a foggy mess of patient names and medication dosages. It was late, past midnight, and I was just trying to get to the subway. I cut through an alley. It was stupid. I knew it was stupid. It shaved maybe 3 minutes off my walk, but it was dark, narrow, and smelled of stale beer. But I was so tired. I just wanted to be home. I was halfway through when I heard it, a sound that did not belong. A low, wet gasp. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run. This is how women end up on the news. I clutched my bag, my keys already woven between my fingers. A pathetic, makeshift weapon. I took another step, faster. Another sound, a thud, like a heavy bag of laundry being dropped, followed by a sharp, choked-off groan. I am a nurse. I hate that part of me sometimes. I hate that I cannot just walk away. I cannot unhear the sound of a human being in genuine, physical distress. "Get out of here, Emma," I whispered to myself. But I had stopped. I turned, peering into the deepest part of the shadow, near a row of overflowing dumpsters. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded thin. Silence. Then another gasp, this one wetter. It was the sound of someone trying to breathe through liquid. My training kicked in, pushing past my fear. That was not a drunk. That was trauma. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The narrow beam cut through the darkness, illuminating slick cobblestones, a graffiti-covered wall, and then a shape. A man. He was slumped against the brick wall, half sitting, half lying. He was wearing an expensive dark suit, now soaked with rain and something else, something darker. I moved closer, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Sir, I am a nurse. Are you hurt?" I pointed the light at his face, and I stopped breathing. It was him, Luca Ferrari, the man from the car. His face was a mess. His lip was split, and a dark bruise was forming over his sharp cheekbone. But that was not the problem. The problem was the spreading, dark stain on his white shirt. Just under his ribs, he was clutching his side, his hand covered in blood. He looked up at me. The beam of my phone light caught his eyes. They were not cold and empty this time. They were wide, not with pain, though I knew he must be in agony. They were wide with utter, absolute shock. He recognized me. He was staring at me as if I were a ghost, as if I were the most impossible thing he had ever seen. "You," he whispered. The word was a bubble of air and blood. My fear vanished, replaced by a sudden cold wave of adrenaline. My nursing brain took over, ticking through a mental checklist: airway, breathing, circulation. "You are bleeding," I said. It was a stupid, obvious statement. I knelt beside him in the grime. "I have to call 911. I shifted my phone, my thumb already moving to the emergency call screen. His hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was terrifyingly strong, a steel trap. "No," the word was a growl. "No hospital, no police." "You are going to die," I said, my voice flat. "Professional. You are bleeding out. I can see it." He will find me," he gasped, his eyes shutting for a second. "My cousin, it was a trap." Betrayal. The word hung in the air between us. I was in an impossible position. I was holding a dying man in an alley, and he was refusing to be saved. He was a criminal. He was dangerous. I should have run. I should have called the police anyway and let them sort it out. But he was looking at me. The arrogance was gone. The inhuman authority was gone. All I saw was a man, my age, bleeding to death on a dirty street, and he was scared. "Please," he whispered. That one word broke me. He was not the monster from the car. He was just a person, my patient. My brain raced. My apartment was out of the question. Leo was there. I could not bring this darkness, this blood, into my home. I cannot take you to my apartment, I said, my voice sharp. I have a son. His face tightened. He tried to push himself up, to wave me away. Go, just go, leave me. I looked at the wound. He had minutes, not hours. Minutes. I made a choice, the choice that would end my life as I knew it. The hospital, I said. No, he hissed. Not the emergency room, the basement. There is a supply closet. It is quiet. No one goes there this time of night. Can you walk? He looked at me, confusion warring with the pain. Why? Because I am not going to watch you die. I snapped. Can you walk or not? He nodded, a tight, grim movement. I looped his arm over my shoulder. It was heavy, muscle. I took his weight. He smelled of rain, metal, and a faint, expensive cologne. We staggered out of the alley. The street was empty. The staff entrance was a block away. I used my badge to get in. The security guard was not at his desk, probably doing his rounds, thank God. The basement was a maze of fluorescent-lit hallways and humming pipes. The air was cool and smelled of bleach. I led him to the old custodial closet, the one next to the broken elevator. I swiped my badge again. The door clicked open. It was small, dark, and filled with stacked boxes of saline bags and cleaning fluids. I practically shoved him inside and eased him to the floor. He slumped against the boxes, his face pale and slick with sweat. Stay here, I ordered. Do not move. Do not make a sound. I will be back. I locked him in. My heart was going to explode. I was breaking a dozen laws, aiding and abetting, stealing, harboring a fugitive. I could lose my license. I could lose my son. I ran to the surgical ward. It was quiet. I went to the supply room, my hands shaking. I grabbed a suture kit, sterile gloves, a bottle of saline to clean the wound, butterfly strips, and a handful of heavy-gauge gauze pads. Then I went to the pharmacy dispensary. I used my code. I took 2 vials of intravenous broad-spectrum antibiotics and a syringe. I stuffed it all into my bag, my scrubs suddenly feeling like a prison uniform. When I got back to the closet, I was shaking. I unlocked the door, and he was still there, his head back against the boxes, his eyes closed. He was alive. I locked the door behind me. I turned on my phone's flashlight again and propped it up. The small room was filled with our shadows. I have to see the wound, I said. He nodded. I took a pair of trauma shears from my bag and cut through his $1,000 shirt and the undershirt beneath. My breath hitched. It was a knife wound, deep, just below his left rib cage. It was still oozing blood, but it was not arterial. He was lucky, incredibly lucky. This is gonna hurt, I said. Just do it. He breathed. I pulled on the gloves. My hands, which had been shaking, were suddenly rock steady. I knew. I was a nurse. This was my world. I cleaned the wound with the saline. He hissed, his entire body going rigid, but he did not make a sound. I inspected the edges. It was clean, a professional hit. I'm not a doctor, I said quietly, threading the suture needle, but I can close this. I know, he whispered. I began to stitch. 1, 2, 3 neat, tight stitches. My hands moved with practiced ease. The only sounds were the faint whisper of the thread passing through his skin and our breathing. He never took his eyes off me. He was not looking at my hands. He was looking at my face. He was studying me. His expression was not one of gratitude. It was one of intense, profound confusion. In his world, people did things for money, for power, for fear. They did not do things for nothing. I was an equation he could not solve. Here I was, a random woman, kneeling on the floor of a dirty closet, stitching him up like he was any other patient, asking for nothing. I finished the last stitch and tied it off. I covered the wound with a heavy gauze dressing and taped it down. I filled the syringe with the antibiotic and found a vein in his arm. He did not even flinch as I pushed the medicine. This will help with infection, I said. I handed him the second vial. You need this, and more. You need a real doctor. You did good, he said. His voice was rough. I started gathering the bloody wrappers, the empty saline bottle. "Why?" he asked. I paused. "Why what?" "Why are you doing this? I saw you that night. You know what I am." I sat back on my heels, the adrenaline finally leaving me, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. "I do not know what you are," I lied. "I just know you were bleeding. I am a nurse. It is what I do." He just stared at me. The silence in the tiny room was heavy. "I have to go," I said, standing up. "My son is at home. Stay here for another hour. Let the antibiotic work. Then you have to leave, and you cannot tell anyone I did this. Ever." "What is your name?" he asked. I hesitated. It was a mistake, but I was too tired to think. "Emma." I reached for his wallet on the floor, thinking he might need it, but he grabbed my hand. His skin was warm. He did not say thank you. He just looked at my hand, then back at my face. "Emma," he repeated, as if tasting the name. I pulled my hand away. 1 hour, then go. I slipped out of the closet, locked the door behind me, and walked out of the hospital. My heart a cold stone in my chest. I did not sleep that night. 2 days later, I was walking Leo to school. I saw it, a black sedan, parked across the street from my building. It was not the sports car. It was the one the other men had been in. It was just sitting there. The windows were tinted. When I came back from the grocery store, it was still there. When I left for my shift that night, it was gone, but a different one was there, parked closer to the corner. He was not threatening me, and he was not trying to scare me. He was watching me. He was the man who had everything, and he had just been given something he could not understand, a gift, with no strings attached, and now, this man who lived in a world of violence and transactions was fixated on me. He was following me. He was learning my routines. I had not just saved his life, I had become his obsession. The car was always there. It was the first thing I saw when I peeked through my blinds in the morning, a dark, anonymous shape across the street. It was there when I walked Leo to school, its presence a cold pressure against my back. It was there when I came home from the hospital, sometimes a sedan, sometimes a black sport utility vehicle. The change in vehicle meant to look subtle, but only highlighting the organized, relentless nature of the watch. For 3 weeks, my life was lived under this invisible, suffocating glass. Fear was a constant, metallic taste in my mouth. I went to work. I smiled at my patients. I read Leo his bedtime stories, my voice calm and even, but inside, I was vibrating. Every slammed door in the hallway made me jump. Every time a stranger looked at me for too long on the subway, my heart hammered. This was not protection. It was a siege. He was a predator, and he had marked my territory. He had marked me. My anger began to outweigh my fear. How dare he? How dare he bring this shadow world to my son's street? I was just a nurse. I was just a mother. I had wanted nothing from him. I had stitched him up in that dirty closet, packed his wound and sent him back into his own darkness, but he had refused to stay there. He had followed me. I decided I had to confront him. This was my life, mine and Leo's. It was not his to watch. But I did not have to find him. He found me. I was at the end of a double shift, the kind of shift that leaves you hollowed out, your bones aching and your brain fuzzy. It was nearly 11 o'clock at night. I was in the hospital cafeteria, which was empty except for a tired-looking resident sleeping with his head on a table. I was just trying to force down a bitter coffee before the long ride home. Miss Carter. The voice was deep and respectful. I looked up. A man in a dark suit stood by my table. He was built like a refrigerator, with a thick neck and a face that showed no expression at all. My heart leaped into my throat. "Yes." "Mr. Ferrari would like to speak with you. If you will please come with me." It was not a request. It was an order wrapped in politeness. I am finished with my shift. I have to get home to my son," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "It will not take long. The car is waiting." He gestured toward the glass doors. I saw it, a black Mercedes, its headlights off, parked in the ambulance bay. I had no choice. To refuse was to make a scene, and I had a terrifying feeling that making a scene was the worst thing I could do. I felt the eyes of the sleeping resident on my back. Maybe he was not asleep. I nodded, my mouth dry. I threw the coffee cup in the trash and followed the silent man. He opened the back door for me. The interior was silent, plush, and smelled like expensive leather. It was like being sealed in a tomb. The man got in the driver's seat, and we pulled away from the hospital. We did not drive far, a few blocks into the wealthiest part of the city. We pulled up to a restaurant. It was dark. There was a small brass sign on the door that said, "Closed for private event." The driver led me inside. The main dining room was empty, the chairs stacked on the tables, but he led me toward the back, to a private room. He was sitting at a table set for two, though there was no food, just a bottle of water. He was healed. The cut on his lip was gone. The bruises faded to nothing. He was wearing a dark gray suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. He was the prince again, cold and beautiful and dangerous. He stood up when I walked in. It was a gesture of respect that felt completely out of place. "Emma," he said. His voice was a low rumble. The man who brought me, his driver, closed the door. We were alone. The silence stretched. He just looked at me, his black eyes unreadable. "You have been watching me," I said. My voice was a whisper, but it was angry. "Yes," he said. "You have your men parked outside my building. You are following me. You are following my son." "I am protecting you," he corrected me, his voice quiet. I almost laughed. "Protecting me from who? From you?" He looked away, a flicker of something crossing his face. Conflict. He was not used to this. He was not used to explaining himself to anyone, especially not to a nurse in worn-out scrubs. "The men who did this to me," he said, gesturing to his side, where I knew the stitches were. "It was a trap. It was set by my cousin." I stared at him. He was admitting this. He was telling me a secret from his dark, violent world. He is ambitious," Luca continued, his voice tight. "He failed. He knows someone helped me. He knows I did not go to one of our doctors. He's looking for the person who saved me. He's looking for you." My blood ran cold. "So your men, they are not watching me. They are watching for him." "Yes." I sat down in the chair opposite him. My legs were weak. "So I am in danger. Because of you. Because I helped you." "Yes," he said again. He looked at me, and the coldness in his eyes was gone. It was replaced by that same intense, burning confusion I had seen in the closet. "Why did you do it?" "I told you," I said, exhausted. "I'm a nurse." "No," he said, leaning forward. "That is not an answer. I have been in this world my entire life. People do things for 3 reasons: money, power, or fear. You did not ask for money. You have no power. And you were not afraid of me. Not really. Not in that closet." I was terrified. I said honestly, "Not of me. You were focused. You were calm." He searched for the word. "You patched me up and told me to get out. You asked for nothing. I cannot understand it. I cannot stop thinking about it." Here it was, the crack in his armor. He was a man who understood only transactions, and I had given him a gift. It was a stone in his shoe. It was a puzzle he could not solve. "I do not want anything from you, Luca," I said, using his name for the first time. It felt heavy on my tongue. "I just want you to leave me alone. Me and my son. Take your cars and your protection and go." He looked pained. "I cannot. Not now. He's looking for you." "Then what?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Am I your prisoner?" Before he could answer, his phone, which was on the table, buzzed. He looked at it. His whole body went rigid. The prince was back. The coldness snapped into place like a mask. He stood up. "You have to leave." What is wrong?" "My driver will take you home. Stay inside. Do not, under any circumstances, leave your apartment tonight. Do you understand me?" He was not the confused man anymore. He was a commander. I nodded, my fear returning. He walked me to the door of the room. His hand brushed my arm as I passed. It was like being touched by fire. I pulled away. He looked at my reaction, his expression tightening, and then I was outside, back with the silent driver. The ride home was fast. I ran upstairs, locked my 3 locks, and checked on Leo, and he was sleeping peacefully. I did not sleep. I watched from my window. His cars were still there. The next day, I had to get groceries. I could not stay locked in my apartment forever. I was jumpy, my head on a swivel. I kept looking for men in suits. It was in the aisle with the pasta sauce. A difficult choice. The marinara is reliable, but the arrabbiata has more, character. The voice was smooth, older, some with a heavy accent. I turned. A man was standing next to me, and he was in his 60s, perfectly dressed in a beautiful cashmere coat. He was smiling, but his eyes were as cold and dead as a shark's. "I do not think we have met," I said, pushing my cart back. "No, we have not. I am Paolo, an old friend of Vittorio, Luca's father." My heart stopped. "The boy, he is reckless," Paolo said, picking up a jar of olives and examining it. "He has his father's fire, but not his discipline. He's becoming distracted. He's forgetting his obligations." He turned his dead eyes on me. He missed a very important meeting with some very important partners. He was, instead, spending his time making arrangements for you. "I do not know what you are talking about," I whispered. Please, do not insult me." His voice was still soft, still smiling. "He has men sitting outside your apartment. He's using family resources to protect a... What are you, a nurse?" He stepped closer. I could smell his cologne. It was old-fashioned, like spices and money. "Luca is a prince. He will one day be a king. He cannot be distracted by commoners. Whatever you did for him, whatever you think he owes you, it ends now." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thick white envelope. He tried to press it into my hand. "A gift," he said, "for your son. Take him. Go somewhere else. Florida, California. It does not matter. But you will leave New York, and you will never, ever speak to Luca Ferrari again." I flinched back, my hand refusing to touch the envelope. It dropped to the floor between us. "I do not want your money," I said, my voice shaking. "I do not want anything from him. I want to be left alone." Paolo's smile vanished. "That is the correct answer, but you are not leaving me with a choice. You are a problem, Miss Carter, and I am the man who solves problems for the Ferrari family. Stay away from him." He did not threaten me, not directly. He did not have to. The threat was in his eyes, in his perfect suit, in the fact that he knew my name and where I bought my groceries. He stepped over the envelope and walked away. I abandoned my cart and ran. I ran all the way home, my lungs burning. I saw the black sedan outside my building, one of Luca's men, my protector. I was trapped. I was caught between Luca, a man I could not understand, and his family, a machine that would crush me without a second thought. I had to choose. I could take Leo and run, just like Paolo said, disappear. Or I could stay. As I was fumbling with my keys, his sports car, the low, black monster from the first night, screamed around the corner and slammed to a stop at the curb. Luca got out. He looked furious. His eyes were black fire. He must have known. He must have heard. He stalked right up to me on the steps of my building. "Did Paolo speak to you?" he demanded. No greeting, no politeness. I was shaking, caught between terror and a sudden, blazing rage. "Yes, in the grocery store. He told me to stay away from you. He offered me money. He threatened my son." Luca's jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped. "He is my father's brother, my uncle. He's trying to get rid of me," I said, my voice low and fierce. "He's right," Luca said, with his voice quiet, harsh. "He's right. You should have taken the money. You should run. This world, my world, it will tear you apart. It will eat you and your son alive." He was trying to save me. He was trying to push me away, to scare me off. He was fighting his own family, and he was fighting himself. He was warning me. The old Emma, the nurse who just wanted to pay her bills, would have agreed. She would have run. But I was not that Emma anymore. I was the Emma he had fixed himself on. I was the Emma whose son had just been threatened. "Is that what you want?" I asked, my voice dangerously steady. "For me to run?" He stared at me, his face a war of emotions. He could not say yes, and he would not say no. "You brought this to my home," I whispered. "Your family, your enemies, your uncle. This is your world, and you dragged me into it. You dragged my son into it." "I know," he breathed, and the word was full of pain. "Then you fix it." It was not a question. It was a command. I was not a victim begging for help. I was a mother, and I was done being scared. He stared at me for a long, silent moment. The confusion was gone. The anger was gone. It was replaced by something new, respect. He gave one sharp nod. Then he turned, got back into his impossible car, and was gone. The sound of his engine a declaration of war. That single, sharp nod was a promise. Then he was gone, a roar of exhaust and fury disappearing into the night. I was left on my steps, my heart a cold, hard knot. I went inside and locked my doors. The 3 deadbolts felt like paper. The next 72 hours were the longest of my life. The cars outside my building did not disappear. They multiplied. Before, there had been one. A quiet sedan. Now there were 2, parked at either end of the block. The men inside were different, too. They were not just watching. They got out of their cars. They stood on the sidewalk. They were a visible, physical perimeter. My building, my street, had been turned into a fortress. But it was a cage. On the first morning, my phone rang. It was my unit supervisor, a good woman named Maria, who I had worked with for 5 years. "Emma," she said, and her voice was strained. I do not know how to say this." "What is it, Maria?" I asked, looking out my window at one of the dark suits standing by a lamppost. "We have to let you go." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What? Why did I make a mistake? A patient? No, nothing like that," she said quickly, her voice low. "Your record is perfect. It is from corporate. They said we have to terminate your employment effective immediately. They said, something about conduct unbecoming and anonymous complaints. Emma, I do not understand it. It makes no sense." I understood. I understood perfectly. "Paolo," I whispered. "What, who?" "Thank you. Maria, I know you tried." I hung up the phone. My job, my lifeline, the one thing that was mine, the one thing that kept me and Leo fed and sheltered, gone, cut away with a single anonymous phone call. This was how they fought. Not with guns, not always. They fought by dismantling your life. They cut your anchor lines and set you adrift. I was unemployed. I was a prisoner in my own apartment. I had maybe $300 in my checking account. Rent was due in a week. I did not hear from Luca. Not a word. The men outside were silent sentinels. They did not speak to me. They just watched. My anger at Luca was a hot, bitter thing. He'd done this. He'd promised to fix it. And instead, he had put me in a cage and let his family destroy me. By the 3rd night, my fear was so sharp it was a physical pain. I had not slept. I was rationing food, trying to make the milk and cereal last. Leo, sensing my tension, was quiet and worried. "Mommy, why are those men outside?" he asked, his small face pressed to the glass. "They are just friends, sweetie," I lied, pulling him away from the window. The lie tasted like poison. That was when the knock came. It was not a normal knock. It was loud, heavy, and absolute, not a police knock, but a knock of pure authority. I froze. Leo hid behind my legs. "Miss Carter." The voice was from the hallway. "My name is Antonio. I work for Mr. Ferrari. Please open the door." It was not one of the men from the street. This was someone new. "Go away," I said, my voice shaking. "Miss Carter, I am not here to harm you. Luca sent me. It is time. You have to come with us." "I'm not going anywhere," and I said, my hand on the deadbolt. "Paolo," the man said, and his voice was urgent. "He knows Luca is making a move. He's not going to wait for you to be a problem anymore. He's sending his own men. They are not here to talk. You and your son are not safe, not even with us outside. This was it, the choice. Stay here, in my paper fortress, and wait for Paolo's men or go with Luca's. Into the dark. I looked at Leo. His eyes were wide with fear. I had no choice. I never had. Get your coat, sweetie, I whispered, my voice sounding hollow. We are going on an adventure. I bundled him up. I grabbed my purse. I did not pack a bag. What was the point? I opened the door. The man, Antonio, was built like Luca's driver, a mountain in a suit. But his eyes were kinder. He looked at Leo and his expression softened. This way, quickly! He led us down the stairs, not to the front door, but to the back. Through the alley, a black sport utility vehicle was idling. 2 more men were with it. They put us in the back seat. The child locks clicked. The city was a blur. We drove for a long time, out of my neighborhood, through the heart of Manhattan. The car was silent. We finally pulled into an underground garage, the door ceiling shut behind us, and were led to a private elevator. My stomach dropped as we ascended. 20 floors, 30, 40. The doors opened directly into a room that was bigger than my entire apartment building floor. It was a penthouse, walled in glass, the lights of New York City glittering below us like a carpet of fallen stars. And the room was full of men. They were all standing, all in dark, expensive suits. I saw Paolo, a dark bruise on his cheek, a look of smug triumph on his face. I saw Luca. He was standing in the center of the room, facing a man who sat in a high-backed chair, his back to the windows. And then the man in the chair turned. He was older, in his 60s, his hair a perfect silver gray. He wore a suit that was a masterpiece of tailoring. He had Luca's face, Luca's hard angles, but his eyes were frozen. They were black ice, ancient and absolutely ruthless. This was Vittorio Ferrari. Luca saw me. His face, which had been a mask of cold fury, broke. He saw Leo, who I was clutching to my chest, my son's face buried in my neck. Luca looked like I had struck him. He had not wanted this. He had not wanted me here. "What is this?" Luca snarled at Antonio. "I told you to take her somewhere safe." "The boss requested her presence," Antonio said, his head bowed. Vittorio smiled. It did not touch his eyes. "So this is the nurse," he said. His voice was like gravel and silk. "The distraction. The reason my son has forgotten his loyalty. The reason he calls a meeting to declare war on his own blood." Paolo smirked. "I told you. Brother, a small fire, easily put out. I took care of her job." "You did what?" Luca took a step toward Paolo, his hands clenched into fists. "Enough," Vittorio said. The word was not loud, but it stopped Luca cold. Vittorio looked at me. He was not looking at me as a person. He was looking at me as a problem on a spreadsheet. "Luca," Vittorio said, his voice calm, reasonable, "you are my son. You are my heir. This family you hold in such contempt is your inheritance. You will take your place. You will end this foolishness. You will send this woman and her child away. We will give her enough money to be quiet. This is the last time we will speak of it." This was the offer, my exile, my silence. Leo stirred in my arms, and I held him tighter. I could feel my own heart beating, a frantic bird in a cage. Luca looked at his father. He looked at his uncle, Paolo, who was sneering. Then he looked at me, at Leo. "No," Luca said. The silence in the room was absolute. The only sound was the faint hum of the city. 50 floors below. "What did you say to me?" Vittorio asked, his voice dangerously soft. "I said no." Luca's voice was clear, and it cut through the room. "I am done. This family, this inheritance, it is poison. It tried to kill me in an alley, and then it threatened a woman whose only crime was saving my life. It threatened her child." "It was business," Paolo snapped. "The woman is a weakness. The child is leverage." Luca moved. It was so fast I barely saw it. He was not the confused man I had known. He was a predator. He crossed the room in 2 strides, and his fist connected with Paolo's face. It was not a punch. It was a blow. Paolo crumpled to the floor. "He is not leverage." Luca roared, and the sound that came out of him was inhuman. The other men in the room shifted, their hands moving to their jackets. "Do not," Vittorio commanded, and they froze. He stood up. He was not angry. He looked disappointed. "You choose this nurse, over $1 billion empire, over your blood. I choose to be a man, not a monster," Luca said, his chest heaving. "I choose the one person who showed me kindness and asked for nothing. You would not even understand what that means." "Then you are no longer my son," Vittorio said, his voice flat. "You are no one. You are cut off. The moment you walk out that door, every man in this room, every man who works for me, has orders to treat you as an enemy. You have nothing." Luca's face hardened. "I know." "And you cannot protect her," his father said, a cruel, logical smile touching his lips. "You, with no money, no army, how will you protect her from our partners, from the men who trusted Paolo? How will you protect her from me? You are a dead man, and she is a dead woman." He was right. The terror was so complete, I could not breathe. This was my choice, my final one. I could stay silent. I could beg for my life. I shifted Leo in my arms, so I was holding him with one arm, and I stood up straight. I looked directly at the old man, the king in his glass castle. My voice shook, but I did not care. "You're wrong," and I said. Every single man in the room turned to look at me. The mouse had roared. "He is not protecting me," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I am standing with him. You do not know me. You think I am just a distraction. You threaten my son. You took my job. You think you have left me with nothing. But you do not know what a mother is capable of when she has nothing left to lose." Luca was staring at me. The shock on his face was real. He had never seen this side of me. This was not the tired nurse. This was the woman who had clawed her way through life, and I was done being pushed. Vittorio stared at me for a long, cold moment. His gaze was analytical. He was reassessing. "A brave speech," he said, and I saw a flash of Luca's fire in his dead eyes, a flicker of respect. "But you are still a mouse in a house of cats? Get out!" Luca looked confused. "What?" "You want to leave," Vittorio said. "Leave. You are out, but you take your problems with you." He pointed at Paolo, who was groaning on the floor. "He is yours, his partners, the ones who want him dead for his failures. They are yours. You want to cut ties. You cannot. You have just inherited the worst part of this world. You have your war, boy. But now, you have no army." Vittorio Ferrari sat back down. "Go." Luca did not hesitate. He grabbed my arm, his touch firm but not rough. "Emma, let's go." He hauled his uncle, Paolo, up by the collar, dragging him. We walked out of the room. The men parted for us like we were ghosts. We got in the elevator. Me, my sleeping child, a dazed Paolo, and Luca. The doors closed, sealing us in the silent, descending box. I was trembling so hard I could barely stand. "Where are we going?" I whispered. Luca looked at me. The fury was gone. The authority was gone. For the first time since I met him, he looked completely and utterly lost. "I do not know," he said. The elevator doors opened onto the garage. The air was cold and smelled of gasoline and concrete. It was a shocking contrast to the sterile, glass-walled prison 50 floors above. Luca did not hesitate. He was still holding my arm, a solid, grounding pressure. He dragged the dazed, groaning Paolo with his other hand. Leo was a heavy, warm weight in my arms, his face still buried in my neck, his breath fogging my skin. He was my shield. He was my purpose. "The blue one," Luca said, his voice a low growl. He led us to a car I never would have picked as his. It was not a gleaming monster of an automobile. It was a 5-year-old sedan, the kind a mid-level manager would drive. It was anonymous. It was perfect. He popped the trunk. Without ceremony, he shoved his uncle inside. Paolo was conscious enough to whimper, a pathetic, terrified sound. "You do this to me. Luca, I am your blood, your father." Luca slammed the trunk shut, cutting off the words. The finality of that sound echoed in the empty garage. He had just sealed his past away. He opened the back door for me. "Put Leo in. Buckle him." His voice was clipped, harsh, but not at me. It was the voice of a man in survival mode. I slid in, the cheap fabric of the seat rough against my scrubs. I fumbled with the child seat buckles. My hands were shaking. I got Leo strapped in. He mumbled in his sleep, disturbed by the motion, but did not wake. Luca got into the driver's seat. When he did not turn the key, when he just sat there for a full 10 seconds, his hands gripping the steering wheel. He was breathing hard. I watched the back of his head, his dark hair disheveled. He was no longer the prince. He was not the monster from the car. He was just a man who had just thrown away an empire, a family, a life, all for me. I realized with a jolt of cold terror that he had done it, but he had no idea what to do next. He had just acted on pure, raw instinct, a rebellion against the poison he had lived in. "Luca," I whispered from the back seat. He did not turn. "I know." He breathed. That was all. He started the car. It had a normal, quiet engine. He navigated the garage, the gate opening for him. We drove out into the dark, quiet streets of Manhattan. We were just another car in the night. We drove for over an hour. We crossed a bridge, the lights of the city receding behind us until they were just a smear of gold against the black sky. I had no idea where we were. We were in a land of strip malls and warehouses. He finally pulled into a motel. It was a squat 2-story building with a flickering neon sign that said vacancy. The paint was peeling. "Stay in the car," he ordered. "Lock the doors." He went into the office. I watched him through the grimy window. He was talking to the night clerk. He paid in cash. I saw him peel the bills from a thick roll he pulled from his pocket. He had been smart. He had prepared for an emergency, just not this one. He came back with a key card. He drove the car around to the back, parking in front of a room on the ground floor, room 103. "Bring Leo," he said. I carried my son into the room. It was small. It smelled of stale cigarettes and bleach. There were 2 double beds with thin, brown comforters. A single lamp cast a sickly yellow glow. This was it. This was our new life. I laid Leo on the bed farthest from the door. I took off his little shoes and pulled the comforter over him. He immediately curled into a ball. I turned to Luca. He was standing by the door, his hand still on the knob. He was staring at his sleeping son. No, not his. My son. "He should not be here," Luca whispered. His voice was raw. He was filled with a sudden, crushing guilt. "He should be in his own bed." "Our apartment is not safe," I said. It was not an accusation. It was a fact. "My job is gone. My life is gone. Luca." He finally looked at me. The full weight of what he had done, what he had pulled me into, was crashing down on him. The defiance from the penthouse was gone. He looked young, lost, and terrified. "Emma, What about him?" I interrupted, nodding toward the car. We could not just leave his uncle in the trunk. Luca's jaw tightened. "I will handle it." He went back outside. I heard the trunk open, then I heard dragging sounds. He half carried, half shoved Paolo into the room. His uncle was a wreck. His expensive suit was torn. His face was bleeding where Luca had hit him. He was trembling. The bravado completely gone. He was just a weak old man. What are you doing?" Paolo stammered, looking at me. "At the cheap room?" Luca threw him into the one flimsy chair by the wall. He found a plastic bag in the trash can, wrapped it around his hands, and used the cord from the lamp to tie Paolo's hands behind the chair. "You tried to kill me." "What?" Luca said, his voice flat, dead. "You threatened her. You threatened her son. In my world, you would be dead. I would have put a bullet in your head in that garage." "Luca, please, I am family. And You stopped being family when you set that trap." Luca snapped. "But I am not you. I am not my father." He stood in front of his uncle, not as a prince, but as a judge. "You are my one and only piece of leverage, uncle, my father. He gave me this problem. He gave me you, and you are going to solve it." "What do you mean?" Paolo whimpered. "You have partners, the ones who you failed, the ones who wanted me dead. They are not happy with you. You are a liability," Luca said, his voice cold and analytical. He was thinking clearly now. The fog of shock was lifting, replaced by a sharp, calculating intelligence. "Without my father to protect you, they will kill you. I am the only person in the world who wants you alive." Paolo's eyes went wide. He knew it was true. "So here is what you're going to do," Luca continued. "You are going to give me every account number, every offshore drop, every name, every contact. You are going to liquidate. You are going to give me the keys to your shadow. And then I am going to let you disappear." This was Luca's change. He was not killing him. He was using him. He was using the tools of the Mafia to escape the Mafia. I watched this, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. I was terrified. I was in a motel room with a bound man and a disinherited Mafia heir. But my panic was gone. My life as a nurse, my quiet, predictable world, was over. I had stepped off that curb. I had stitched him up. I had stood up to his father. This was my life now. I went into the small, grime-ringed bathroom. I soaked a thin washcloth in warm water. I came out and walked past Luca, to the whimpering man in the chair. Luca grabbed my arm. "What are you doing?" "He is bleeding," I said simply. I pulled my arm free. I knelt in front of Paolo and began to gently clean the blood from his face. He flinched, staring at me as if I were insane. Why are you—" he stammered. "Because this is who I am," I said, my voice quiet. "I am not one of you." I looked up at Luca, who was watching me with that same profound confusion from the supply closet. "And he is no good to you if he bleeds to death or has a heart attack from fear. We need him calm." I was a nurse. I was a mother. I was the only person in this room who was not broken. I was his strength. He did not know it yet, but I was. I finished cleaning the cut. "Now," I said, standing up and facing Luca. "He's right. Your father is right. They will hunt us. We have no money, except what is in your pocket. We have a 6-year-old boy asleep on the bed. What is the plan?" He looked at me. He saw no tears, no hysterics, just me, waiting. "I have a place," he said, his voice hesitant. "Upstate, a cabin. It is off the grid. My father does not even know about it. I bought it under a false name years ago. We can go there. We can hide. We can use him." He gestured to Paolo. "To get what we need. New identities. Money. A way out." "A way out?" I repeated. "Out of the country. Out of this life," he said. He was all in. He had made his choice. He had chosen me. He was standing on the rubble of his old life. And he was asking me to stand there with him. I thought of my apartment, my job, my old, safe, exhausting life. It was gone. I looked at Leo, sleeping peacefully, his face innocent. He was all that mattered. "Okay," I said. Luca's shoulders sagged, not in defeat, but in relief. He had been alone his entire life, and in that penthouse, he had chosen to be even more alone. He had not expected me to follow. He took a step toward me. He was so close I could feel the heat coming off him. He slowly, hesitantly, reached out his hand. He did not touch my face or my arm. He just held his hand out, palm up, an offering. I looked at his hand. It was a strong hand, a hand that had done violent things, a hand that had gripped a steering wheel in fury. I placed my hand in his. He curled his fingers around mine, his grip tight, desperate. It was not a lover's touch. It was the touch of two survivors, clinging to the same piece of wreckage in the middle of a storm. "I will not let them hurt you, Emma," he whispered, his voice thick. "I swear it." "I know," I said, and the strangest part was, I believed him. "Now, let's get him to talk." That night in the motel room, with the highway noise rattling the thin windows, was the first night of our new life. Paolo, my captive audience, a terrified man bound to a cheap chair, began to talk. He was a coward at his core. His ambition had been a fragile glass, and Luca had shattered it. Now, faced with the certainty that both his brother and his business partners wanted him dead, he clung to Luca as his only, desperate chance at survival. He spilled everything: account numbers, passwords, the names of men in 3 different countries who could make new identities, the location of a safe house in Montreal. He talked for hours, his voice a pathetic, reedy whisper. I did my part. I made coffee on the disgusting in-room machine. I gave Paolo a cup, holding it to his lips. I found a small first aid kit in the trunk of the sedan, and I properly cleaned and bandaged his face. I was not kind. Not really. I was practical. A man delirious with pain or fear cannot give accurate information. Luca watched me, his face a mask of stone. He was learning. He was seeing a strength that did not come from a gun. By 4 a.m, it was done. Luca had made a dozen calls on a burner phone he had stashed in the car. He spoke in low, clipped tones, in a language I did not understand. He was moving ghosts of money through wires, pulling the strings of his old world one last time to build a wall for his new one. At dawn, we moved. We put the now useless Paolo in the back of the car. Untied, we drove for 2 hours to a bus terminal in a city I did not recognize. Luca gave him a stack of cash, $10,000. "This is more than you deserve," Luca said, his voice flat. "Get on a bus. Go south, never come north. If I ever see your face again, if I even hear your name, I will finish what I started." Paolo, a broken old man in a ruined suit, just nodded, his eyes wide with fear. He took the money and scuttled into the terminal without a word. He was gone. We drove for another hour and abandoned the sedan in the parking lot of a 24-hour supermarket. We walked 2 miles to a used car lot, and Luca paid cash for an old, sturdy-looking pickup truck. It was blue. It was ugly. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Then we just drove north. We drove for 8 hours. Leo woke up, confused but not scared. I was in the back with him. I told him we were on a big surprise vacation. I played I Spy with him, my voice bright and cheerful, while my whole world was dissolving in the rearview mirror. Luca never spoke. He just drove, his eyes fixed on the road, his grip on the wheel relentless. The cabin was not a cabin. It was a small, solid house, built of stone and dark wood, hidden deep in a forest, at the end of a dirt road that was almost invisible. The air was cold, sharp, and smelled of pine trees. There was no one for miles. The first month was the hardest. The house was cold. It ran on a generator that Luca, a man who had never so much as changed a light bulb, had to figure out how to operate. There was a well for water. We had to chop our own wood for the fireplace. Luca was a different man. He was stripped bare of his privilege, his anger, his authority. He was clumsy. He was frustrated. I watched him try to swing an axe for the first time. His movements awkward, his $1,000 suit pants snagging on a branch. He swore. He threw the axe. He kicked the unsplit log. He was a prince trying to be a pauper, and he hated it. And I, who had been a pauper all my life, I thrived. I knew how to stretch food for a week. I knew how to patch clothes. I created a new life for Leo out of the wilderness. We took walks. We identified animal tracks. I made a home. I found Luca on the porch one night, just staring at his hands. They were not smooth anymore. They were blistered, cut and raw. "You are good at this," he said quietly, not looking at me. "At living." "It is all I have ever done," I said, sitting in the rocking chair next to him. "You just had to learn how." He was changing. The cold arrogance was being burned away by hard, physical labor. He was becoming quieter, steadier. He fixed the generator on the 3rd try. He learned to split the wood. He taught Leo how to whittle a small, sharp stick. We lived. It was a simple, hard, quiet life. We had money, wired to a new account under a new name, but we were ghosts, our new names. James and Alice felt strange on our tongues. One afternoon, 6 months in, a truck came up our drive. I saw it first. My heart stopped. I ran inside, grabbing Leo. Get in the pantry. Do not make a sound." Luca was already at the window, a hunting rifle in his hands. He had bought it at the local hardware store. He looked calm. He looked ready. The truck stopped. A man in overalls got out. He looked old, confused. "Ma'am," he called out, spotting me in the doorway. "Sorry to bother you. My dog ran off. You seen a beagle with a red collar." The tension broke so fast my knees went weak. "No," I said, my voice shaky. "I'm sorry, we have not—" The man tipped his hat and drove away. That night, Luca finally held me. It was not a hug of passion. It was the same desperate, clinging grip from the motel. We were two people on a raft, and we had just survived another wave. "He will never stop." Luca whispered into my hair, "My father. He will never stop looking." "I know," I said, "but he will not find us." "He already did. Emma?" he said. I pulled back. "What are you talking about?" "This place. I thought he did not know, but I bought it. I used a broker who, I realize now, was one of his men. He has always known where this is. He has been letting me hide." I felt the chill. "He's giving you a cage." "Yeah, he is giving me a choice to—" said, his face hard. "He's waiting for me to fail. He's waiting for me to get tired of this, tired of chopping wood and come home, begging." "Will you?" I asked. He looked at me, and for the first time, the last of the ice in his eyes melted. He reached out and touched my face, his rough fingers gentle. "This is the only place I have ever been free. This is the only thing I've ever built. He thinks I am his son, but he is wrong. I am your man, Emma." Our new life settled. It was not easy. It was real. Then, a package arrived, a year after we had run. It was left at the end of our driveway, a simple, unmarked brown box. Luca brought it inside. He did not open it. He just stared at it. "It is from him," he said. "Open it," I said. He cut the tape. Inside, nestled on black velvet, was a silver locket. It was antique, beautiful, and impossibly expensive. There was no note. I did not have to ask. I knew. It was a message. I know where you are. I see you." The old Luca, the angry, rebellious boy, would have smashed it. He would have cursed his father. This new Luca, this man, just looked at it. He looked at me and at Leo, who was building a castle with blocks on the floor. He picked up the locket. He did not put it on me. He did not throw it away. He walked to a small wooden desk and opened a drawer. He placed the locket inside, next to a handful of seeds for the garden and a spare rifle shell. He closed the drawer. He was not his father's son. He was not a prince in the shadows. He was a man, and he was choosing to face his own past, not by running, but by living. The shadow would always be there, but it was just a shadow. He walked over to me, and he kissed me. It was not the desperate kiss of a survivor. It was a slow, deep, quiet kiss of a man who was finally home. He pulled away, his eyes clear and calm. He smiled. It was the first real, unguarded smile I had ever seen from him. "The garden needs weeding," he said. "I know," I said. He took my hand, and together, we went outside into the sunlight. Thank you so much for listening to our story. We would love to know where in the world you are listening from. Please let us know in the comments. Share your thoughts and subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories. Please like this video and hit that hype button. It really helps us bring more stories like this to listeners just like you.